Today, we're going to take you through where we've got to on our search for our new van.
And I'm pleased to say we've made some progress.
In this video, we'll start by doing a quick recap of the background that got us to this point. We'll then take you through what we've been up to since and how we got to the decision we've made. So come with us and let's check it out.
LeisureBit is the way to go with David, Rachel and Roxy. Let's hit the road and explore.
We began our search in January 2024 at Kimberley in Darlington.
It's the middle of January 2024 and today we begin our journey of finding our next camper van.
And what we didn't realise at that time was how long and how wide this search was going to be.
And looking for a replacement van for our Elddis CV20 has been really difficult, and it's all coming up 4 years old now.
Our search for the current van for the CV20 took us from April 2018 to September 2020 to place the order. A pandemic got in the way at the time. And the CV20 wasn't our first van. We're not new to the leisure industry.
Between 2006 and 2014, we had a Bessicar E795, lovely van. And prior to that, we had an Elddis CV20 caravan as well.
And do you know what? If you ever buy a caravan, top tip for you, make sure you get the right weight to vehicle balance. I didn't. We even had a static caravan or lodge between that time from when we got rid of the motorhome to what we've got now. So we've pretty much tried everything.
Talking about the CV20, somebody bought the CV20 without me knowing about it. I have forgiven him, it took a while, but I've got to say it was the right decision because we have met the most wonderful people, subscribers, people on campsites, etc. It's been brilliant. Not only that, it's taken us to some most fantastic places.
That it has. We've been to hundreds of campsites, shows and events. It's been absolutely amazing. And I think it was one of the best decisions ever made. Anyway, back to the story. So we had a choice. Did we want another caravan? Did we want a motorhome? Or did we want another camper van? That was the question. So let's go through each in turn. So first one on the caravan. I think caravans are brilliant for people that want to go and stay somewhere for a little while. That isn't us. We have a habit of moving around all over the place and like to go for 1 or 2 nights to a place and then move on to somewhere else. I was pretty rubbish at caravans as well. And one day I was sat on a campsite at Courtgill at Osmotherley and a motorhome pulled in after I'd spent an hour setting up the caravan. They were sat having a cup of tea in 5 minutes. And I thought, that's the life for me. That's what drove to the motorhome. One thing about the motorhome though, it was large. It was a 7.5 metre long and they're pretty wide as well. Now I'm not saying we would never go back to a motorhome because they are really luxurious. Having reflected on it, and we talked a lot about it, didn't we? We looked at motorhomes. We looked at A-classes. In the last year, we have looked, because we were so stuck on this one. But what it boiled back down to was, we actually like the camper van. I like it. I find it nice and straightforward to drive, which then gives confidence to go places we wouldn't otherwise go to without unduly worrying. When we had the motorhome, it was a pain in some places, wasn't it, Rachel? It was an absolute nightmare at times, because it was just too big. Some people manage that really well. I wasn't one of them. So the camper vans worked for us really well. So we'd made the decision, I think if you'd followed us as well, that it was going to be a camper van next.
We loved the rear lounge in the CV20, but in this hunt we've looked at lots of different vans, different styles, different shapes, different layouts. We've even looked at ones that are way out of our price range.
We've seen so many vans and so many absolutely stunning vans with some fantastic features, some brilliant innovation and things you would never have thought of, and new things that we'd never seen before. Some really, really clever ideas.
But None of them ticked all of our boxes because it was incredibly important to us, especially with David's height, that we get the right layout.
I didn't realise how awkward it was when you're as tall as me at around 6'5" in finding a van that you can sleep comfortable with, but also in terms of other aspects of the layout.
After many, many hours of debating,
And there has been many hours, I can tell you.
and we've reviewed our shortlists, finally made our decision, and I think I knew deep down this is where we would get to fulfil one of David's ambitions.
Ever since I was a young lad, and I'm talking in my teenage years, I always wanted to create a camper van. I even went to an auction and almost put a bid in on an ex-British Telecom bright yellow Luton van. Imagine if I'd have got that. The vision would have been realised all those years ago. I've always had a passion for camping. I always got drawn back to a van. And now, over 30 years later, that dream might come true.
David's now going to take you through the pros and cons that we went through to get to our decision.
What you start with is, what's important to you? Let's start by looking at buying a ready-made camper van. This is what we considered in terms of the pros and the cons of going down that route. Firstly, resale value. Generally, manufactured camper vans, following the initial depreciation, usually hold the value and are easier to sell. That isn't always the case, but you typically find that because it's easier to get a price on them. Secondly, compliance. You would expect them to meet all of the legal safety standards, for example, gas, electrics, and crash testing. Third, build quality, professionally engineered, tested, and certified for safety. However, that isn't always the case. When you research, there are a lot of dissatisfied people with the vans. Fourth, a consistent finish, uniform, high quality interior and exterior finish. And finally, time saving. The van may be there, ready to drive away, so there's no waiting for a build or DIY time investment in building a van. Now let's look at the cons. The first one, upfront cost. It's usually more expensive than self-build or custom options. Clearly with self-build and custom, you could go mad and it could be much more expensive, but for something equivalent, it's typically less expensive. Second, there's limited customisation. You're restricted to the factory layout and options available from the factory with less flexibility, and it can be harder to modify or adapt after purchase. It's not necessarily impossible, but you often need to get third-party companies to do the modifications. Thirdly, generic design. It may lack unique features or personal touches. Fourth, potential over-engineering. You can often find features that you didn't want or don't need, but you still end up paying for them as they come as part of that build. Less involvement. There's no hands-on experience or learning during the build, so if something happens to your van, you may not understand how it's been put together. So what about building a camper van? This is what we considered. Let's start with the pros. Firstly, you get full customization. You can tailor every single detail to your needs and style and only pay for what you want. Secondly, cost control. It's potentially cheaper, especially if you do it yourself. And one of the key things you can do, you may not need to build it all in one go. You might save some things to add later. So you do have the control and the ability to do that. Third, a unique design. It stands out with a one-of-a-kind van where you can really make it unique and personal to you. Fourth, learning experience. You can gain valuable skills and satisfaction from the build. That's something I was really interested in because I think you learn an awful lot. You learn new skills. And finally, personal connection, a strong sense of ownership and pride. That was our 5 pros. Now let's look at the cons. Firstly, it's time consuming building or commissioning a van and takes a lot of time and effort. Second, you may not get a warranty. It may be limited and it may just be on the build or the components,
but it may be more complex than buying a ready-made van.
You're going to have to sort it out yourself. You can't take it back to a dealer and get them to sort it out, because there isn't a dealer.
Third, resale uncertainty. It may be harder to sell, or it may fetch a lower price when you subsequently come to sell the van in the future. Fourth, compliance risks. You must ensure all work meets legal and safety standards, and DIY errors can be costly or unsafe, and it's your responsibility. 5, unknown costs. Budgets can spiral if unexpected issues arise. And 6, it can be stressful and overwhelming. The process can be daunting, especially for first-timers. There are a lot of decisions to be made, a lot of considerations, and there's a book's on your shoulder, really. So that was our 6 cons. As well as those points, there are many other things to consider, and here's a few of them that didn't make our top list, but they may make yours. Firstly, finance. If applicable, how would you finance your van? Dealer networks appeared to have more options here.
But also think on finance. Can I afford the repayments and still afford to go away? Rachel and I ended up in a bit of a pickle many years ago now. It was after we got the motorhome. It was expensive and we overcommitted. We couldn't afford to go away.
We had to restrict what we did.
Always be careful not to go beyond your means. Otherwise you can't enjoy it. And we get these things to enjoy, right?
Secondly, dealer networks. Sometimes you may want to buy a van from some distance away, but may want any warranty work or servicing done locally, and that's a consideration as well. If you have an issue with the van, where you've purchased it from and where you would take it back to get the work done in the event of an issue. Thirdly, decision making. With a manufactured van, there are limited decisions on options, colours, and that sort of thing. With a custom or self-build, there can be literally hundreds of decisions to be made on every single detail. There is an awful lot to consider, and I spent a lot of time trying to work out and cross-reference things and work out weightings of things and whether it was important and not important. But the reality of it is, for us, what it all boiled down to was, firstly, customisation. Do you need to customise, or can you find what you want, or is something else close enough? And that's what our hunt for our next van has been about for the last 18 months. Secondly, time. How much time do you have for research, planning, and associated work? Thirdly, skill. Do you have the required skills and or experience, or can you source them for part or all of your build?
And this is an interesting one, because some people are amazing and they have the skills to pretty much turn the hand to everything. I need to actually weigh up what I could and couldn't do myself. There's 2 questions I'd normally ask there. One, if I make a mess of it, how recoverable is it? I'll give you an example. If you cut a window in the side of your van and you cut that window too big, we've all seen people do it, you can't put that back very easily, can you? And things like that, I would apply extra diligence to the decision I made of, am I going to do it myself or am I going to get somebody to do it? If, however, you're cutting a piece of wood, the wood's worth £50, you're fairly confident you're going to get it right, your risk level is £50 for another piece of wood if you mess it up. That's quite a sensible risk, isn't it, to take? So it's about the skill there, and I think knowing where it's beyond your means, but being realistic as well. Can I do permanent damage? If yes, get professional help. If no, give it a go.
And then finally, initial cost and total cost of ownership. So considering the initial cost and the future resale value, what's the total cost of ownership? Let's now unpack total cost of ownership. Let's work through an example. If we buy a ready-built campervan with the specific options we wanted, the published retail price for 2 of the makes and models on our shortlist is over £100,000.
At published retail price, I'd look at a couple of makes and models that I thought were really nice vans. You can see on the screen there. Both of them, with the options I wanted, came in over £100,000.
If we build a van with similar spec using similar components, we'd be looking at 65,000 for a self-build or around 85,000 for a custom conversion as you're paying for labour.
I think just looking at what things are worth in 5 years' time, it's going to be worth about half that.
We carry that for each of these options, just keep it simple.
Now, I'm really conscious as well, the market is in fluctuation at the moment, so that could be significantly less or it could be significantly more. We've seen a bubble over the last few years where prices are higher, but this is looking ahead 5 years and just trying to keep it somewhere where we'd expect to see, but it could obviously move either way. None of us can predict the future, so this is just applying some common sense.
Let's unpack each one of those. Let's start with if you buy the £100,000 van. In 5 years' time, we'd estimate that would be worth half the original cost, as we mentioned. So the cost of ownership then for those 5 years is £50,000. For clarity, that is for the vehicle itself. It doesn't cover any other expenses. It is literally depreciation on the vehicle, which gives you an annual depreciation cost of £10,000. If we build a van, assuming it costs us £65,000 and it's worth half of that, so for comparison here, the bought one was worth £50,000 in 5 years and the built one's worth £32,500 in 5 years. The cost of ownership on the build then is £32,500, so the annual cost of depreciation is £6,500. And then finally, on a custom build, working at 85,000 cost, half of that's 42,500. So the annual cost for that one becomes £8,500 in depreciation. I found it very interesting to compare that because it's very easy to get tied up into the future pound value that the vehicle's sold for.
Consider that into the factor, and that then gives you a total cost of ownership. Again, welcome any feedback if you think there's a more precise way of working these out.
Do let us know in the comments. And finally,
is this for real or is it just another dream? What do you think, Rachel?
I think it's for real.
It is for real. That's what we're going to do. We're going to build a van and get help where we need it. Don't forget to join us next time where we'll go through which base vehicle we've chosen. And it might not be what you're expecting. And if you already know, drop in the comments what vehicle you think we've gone for. Thank you for watching.
Hope you've enjoyed it.
And we will catch you for the next bit.
Bye.